Hi folks, welcome to Sorting Myself Out. My name is Ryan Holsapple, and today I've got a few updates for you before we dive right into this podcast with Angelina. Angelina is an audience member who wrote into Mercury during a live stream last week in which she was feeling desperate and suicidal. She reached out to talk to both of us via email, and we managed to have a really productive conversation about the different aspects and challenges of life that she's dealing with. I think it was very helpful for Angelina. It sounds like Angelina is really working hard to get on the right path in her life, and I think you might find this conversation useful, especially if you know anyone who has dealt with feeling suicidal, or if you might have dealt with feeling suicidal yourself. Also, we get into some pretty intense topics about trauma and past history where people have been abused or severely mistreated, and I just want to give you a fair warning that we get into some stuff that might be a little bit intense at times, and it was all for the better to really understand Angelina and to help her to fully get on track, and I think that she's got a lot of great stuff to work with at this point. A few updates for you. I have been honored and blessed by Dr. Roger Strachan in that he's handing me down his business and legacy, Center for Creative Choice. After several years of training with Dr. Strachan, it's just, I can't tell you what a blessing it is to be in a position where I can carry forward all the beautiful teachings and philosophies he's built over his lifetime. One of the things that I'm doing right now is working on the website for Center for Creative Choice. We'll be offering services, namely around providing clients with a container where they can work on themselves and experiment with their own transformational goals in life and make creative choices about how they want to live and respond to the life issues at hand. This is just going to be such a beautiful thing. The website is going to be up shortly. I'm going to keep working on it and see how far I can get by the end of this week. We did have to edit out parts of this conversation with Angelina. I think everything will still flow and make sense, and you'll be able to process it just fine. Again, I hope you enjoy this. Thank you so much for your support, and we will continue providing content and building this amazing community.
Why don't we record it so we have the option, and if we don't want to put it up at the end, there's no pressure.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Okay, perfect. Well, I know that you were typing into Mercury the other evening when he was on his live stream, and it sounded like you had quite a connection together there. And I'm just curious if you could catch me up to where we are now.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for taking the time and being there for me, or connecting and reaching out to me.
Of course.
I really appreciate it. And well, it was kind of ironic because Mercury named the live show Why Am I Here? And I was just having a really bad night the other night, and I still am very much struggling. I'm in therapy at the moment. I'm taking DBT, the dialectic behavioral therapy. But I mean, you know, like most humans, I guess, experienced a lot of trauma. So I'm like barely, I don't know. It's been, I just knew I clicked with Mercury. There was a lot I had in common with him, and a lot of the same experiences and kind of the same thought processes, or at least the same kind of wavelength as far as thinking goes. And I don't know, I just felt like he could help me. Like, it sounded like he's been where I've been, or you know, that he can at least understand me. But when I reached out to Mercury the other night, I've just been real suicidal. Unfortunately, it's kind of painful to tell the story. But my dog died, and it ended up being my fault. And I was telling Mercury that I'm just really struggling with like the guilt and shame of that. And
Wow.
But
So what do you mean when you say it was your fault?
Well, I was sleeping for about 3-4 months straight because of something that happened that was really bad. And just to, I guess my therapist was saying to cope, well, it's like a, survival. Your brain is, you're trying to protect yourself. And I slept too much, and I woke out of the dead of sleep to my dog crying because I thought he needed the bathroom. So out of the dead of sleep, I put my dog outside alone by the pool, and I came back and he drowned.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. That's so, wow. I can't imagine waking up to that. And you blame yourself, and you're beating yourself up over that, it sounds like.
Yeah, my soul is really, I'm really glad Mercury had such a heart to reach out, because I don't feel like I have anybody. And thank you for understanding that it's very painful. The guilt and the shame almost feel like it's eating my soul, and I feel like I need help.
Yeah. Well, we're happy to be here for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, like you'd started by thanking us, I'd like to actually thank you for reaching out. I know it can be very, very difficult. So both to have sent the first message on the live stream and then to follow up as well. Like, even though you said you were going to write into the channel, I was wondering later that night, and until I found out that you had messaged, worried that you might be too afraid to reach out or something. And I really, really appreciate it. There's something very intimate and loving about reaching out to someone when you're in that kind of state.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just found it beautiful that you reached out to me. I really appreciated it. My main reason for doing this channel is to find some way to do some good. And the fact that you chose, I'm glad you ended up picking that video that night. And I'm really glad you chose to reach out to us. That means a lot to me. And genuinely, thank you for that.
Oh, wow. Wow, I could feel that. Totally, thank you. I feel the same exact way.
And in fact, today, considering the topic, I was almost thinking it was ironic, but I was really happy and looking forward to talking to you today, even though the discussion was going to be your suicidal depression. I was very much looking forward to it. And so to go back to that night, had you watched our channel before?
Yes, I was with the channel before it got switched over, so it was a little confusing, but I think I see what you guys are doing. Basically, it's in your care now.
Oh, okay. So you had been following Andrew, and this is the first time you've seen, or the other night was the first time you'd seen either of us?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah. And so what it is Andrew decided to just live a more personal life. I don't know how much you saw at the end, but he'd regret at some point some of what he put out. So he took all that down, and he was going to just, he was going to leave the channel either way, whether we took it over or not. And he asked to take it over so that it could continue on and turn into something else, is how we took it over. But that night that I happened to go live, I didn't know why I felt the need to go on fully. I'd taken the day off totally from the channel. Ryan turns out he was having a bad day, but it was I didn't hear from him. I was happy to just forget about the channel for the day. And then I found late at night, it was really on my mind. And then I took my sleeping pills and did a quick workout, which put me into this really strange sort of headspace, sort of the sedative and the upper of working out. And it just really strongly felt like I should go online, but had nothing at all to say. And the reason I titled it, "Why Are You Here?" is I wasn't sure why I was going on. I felt like I was going on for the sake of hearing what somebody else had to say. And so I meant, why are you here? I liked that it could be taken two ways. It seems you took it more on the metaphysical, as in, why am I alive? And I meant it as the combination of that and why are you here right now, as in, why did you click on this video? So I don't, sorry, I really meant to go back through and read your comments before doing this today. I was going to do it right before to have it fresh. Because I'm a little, my memory's a little foggy of it because I was on the sleeping pills, but I didn't have time. I was rushing around right until we jumped on. So,
oh, no worries.
What are your, because for me, I've got like, I prefer to keep things in the realm of what the other person is comfortable with. So if you were an atheist, I would proceed with the more agnostic part of myself. If you were some sort of believer, I would delve into that more.
Well, that was part of my question because, you know, I know Andrew, he wasn't all too like spiritual. He tapped into it a little bit sometimes on his channel, but for me personally, yeah, I mean, I've been, you know, I can't say I'm an atheist because I've experienced such strange, unexplainable things in my life that there's no way that there isn't something else in my own experience. So I tend to, I've always been drawn to like the metaphysical and spiritual stuff, and I don't know if that's the right words, but interestingly enough, my path has led me here, and I've experienced a lot of abuse, a lot of alcoholics, physical, emotional, at times sexual abuse. So, and I've been gaslit my whole life, meaning gaslit means, you know, you're told your reality isn't true, even though it is what you experience, it is true, but you keep getting told by the people around you it didn't happen. So I had about 2 decades of that, so I ended up losing my mind. You know, the trauma books and things I'm reading, I mean, obviously, you get hit long enough, or if you get abused long enough, you will lose your mind, or, you know, I experienced like a psychotic break. And, sorry, it's a little difficult. My mom told me to kill myself about a year ago, and she's been saying that, but, so I left to my friend's house, right? But I went into a rage. Like I pretty much lost my mind. I just went. I think mostly it's because I've attempted suicide 3 times before, but to hear that from my mom really broke my heart. So I ended up staying with a friend, and right before, see, now I understand looking back last year what happened, because I was with an ex, his name was Frankie, and he was very physically abusive. And I took pictures of him, you know, with my arms and my body all bruised up and scratched up. And I was going to call the cops on him, and I never did. But what I'm learning is that when Frankie would hit me, it re-traumatized me. That's what I'm learning in therapy and my books and all the research I do. It basically re-traumatized me. So it's like it's called CPTSD, and I got fired from my job because apparently, from what my therapist told me, I had a CPTSD flashback because that lady made me feel like Frankie. Frankie made me feel less than human, and it makes me sick and angry. And I guess I was too fragile at that point. I thought, you know, I was driving to work. I was driving to my therapy appointments, and I was like, I'm fine. Everything's fine. It's fine. I have a job. I never thought I could, like, keep a job and go back to school and, like, driving myself to therapy. Like, I was really proud of myself. But I didn't know Frankie messed me up that bad until I got fired because I had a flashback, apparently. And so So yeah,
So when did you get fired?
it was 20. I want to say like spring of 2018.
Okay. So that was a while ago. And then did you say you recently went into a rage?
That was last year.
Okay, that's what you meant. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And so you're basically saying that you got triggered at work and you transferred that flashback over to your employer or your coworker.
Yeah, it
Okay.
was unfortunate. I mean, I didn't know I had CPTSD until, I mean, I've heard that word, but I didn't know what it meant. And now that I've researched it, it's like everyone thinks it's just for war veterans, but it's anyone that's suffered repeated abuse
Yeah.
and trauma. So it does mess up your brain, and it did mess me up really bad, Frankie and my mom and my sister.
Sure.
And then when I told my sister that I was being hit, she hit me, so that re-traumatized me again.
Wow.
So
So can I ask a few clarifying questions?
yeah.
Okay, so one is, are you currently in abusive situations or are you free and clear at this time?
I think it goes in cycles, honestly, but I told her she said it to me again, right? And that's where I was getting to, so it's jumping a little ahead, but it's okay.
Yeah.
So it seems like every February, which is when my grandpa passed, we go into this cycle and she ends up telling me to kill myself. And it really hurts, or it's a big trigger for me, obviously. I mean, I attempted suicide when I was 14, and I was the most successful. Like, that was the closest that I got to dying at 14. So I guess I could say I'm safe, but I've talked to my sister and I told her I'd go to a shelter. I used to go to my grandparents down the street, but they're dead, so I can't go there anymore. So I have to call the shelters if I don't feel safe. But she's still drinking, and she hasn't hit me since last year, but she'll still pick on me like she did the other day and told me to kill myself. So when you ask if I'm safe, yeah, I'd say I'm safe. And if I realize that I'm not, I think I could try calling the shelters.
Wow. Okay. Gotcha. So you've been going through these cycles for years and years and years, huh? Wow. And
there's a big piece that I wanted to tell you, but go on, please.
No, go ahead. This is about listening to you. I just want to understand.
Oh, apologize. Yeah, no, I just feel like it's a big piece, and it's really pathetic and it's very embarrassing. So forgive me, it's a little difficult.
Actually, can I just say one thing first before you tell us? So I just want to say I love you, and nothing that you've told us or that you're gonna tell us makes me think any less of you.
Thanks.
I've been very close to a number of people who have scars from attempted suicides or self-harm. I've been in a mental institute, had total psychotic breaks. Although I've never made an actual attempt, I've been severely suicidally depressed for extended periods. So I can understand both psychosis and suicidal depression. And I just want to let you know that, and I know, like, I can speak for Ryan on this, neither of us are judging you in any way.
Absolutely.
It's understandable that you have had the reaction that you've had, what you've experienced. And so I just want to say that. And now, yeah, like, I'd love to hear more and find out more about this. But it seems that you've been undergoing significant abuse for the majority of your life, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And also, somebody telling someone who has attempted suicide before to kill themselves that is not normal.
Thank you.
You're dealing with people who have mental problems of their own, and like you said, you've been gaslit, so maybe you've been told that it's you that has the problem and they're perfectly normal. Just from what I've heard so far, nobody in this situation is perfectly normal. None of this has been, like, this is not your fault, and me and Ryan aren't normal either. So, and again, I'm touched that you're willing to share this with us. And I think we can make at least some progress here. But I just wanted to sort of jump in and let you know that nothing you're saying is freaking me out. Even like the night when you typed, because the first thing you said was that you killed your dog, but you didn't say specifically how. I was entirely ready for that I was talking to somebody who had beaten their dog to death in some sort of delusion, or so even the way your dog died was much tamer than what I was preparing myself for. But nothing you're saying is shocking me. Nothing you're saying is making me feel anything but love towards you.
Oh, thank you. I feel like crying. That's really sweet. I appreciate like the no judgment you guys are able to hold that space and
Absolutely.
just let me be human. And you know all my therapists tell me too. They said you're not crazy. You're just reacting normally to a really shitty situation. So even though my friends and family think that, the professionals and the third person doesn't. Granted, you weren't there, but I'm telling the truth, and it really hurts when I get gaslit or say that I'm lying or I want attention or something. That's ridiculous.
Right.
And but the big piece that's really difficult is that, so I left last year when she told me that in the middle of the night to my friend's house at like 3 a.m. So I stayed with my friend Sora, and she has a shed that her dad built her that she plays video games in. So I slept in there. And Sora's just a very emotionally detached person. Like, she's not my friend anymore. But she just wasn't able to have emotions, and so she was able to be physically there for me. I'm glad she gave me a bed and food, and I was able to stay warm for the most part and safe. But yeah, she couldn't be there for me any other way. So her brother I was talking to, and he would be there for me, and he was just listening to me. He'd just sit there and listen to me. He'd let me cry in front of him and talk, and he held my hand at one point, and he tried to take it farther, and I was like, I'm very vulnerable right now, like I can't do that, but I appreciate your presence and your help, So I ended up leaving Sora's for, God, I wish I would have just went to a park or something, because all the shelters were closed. None of the beds were open, so I literally had nowhere to go. Like, I don't know anybody. I don't really have friends. My grandparents are dead. Like, I don't know anywhere to go. So my friend Jessica ends up, for whatever reason, I guess Sora couldn't, I couldn't stay with Sora anymore. So I went to my friend Jessica's so-called friend, and it was horrible. It was like one of the worst experiences I've ever had. Very humbling. I've learned a lot to humble my privileged ass, but I did learn a lot, even though it was very painful. Her family is they're immigrants from Mexico. When I was with her, they didn't have their papers, and they were very racist. Just towards white people, really. But I'm Spaniard, so yeah, it makes sense to me. I was telling my friends, like, it makes sense. I don't blame them. Even though my ancestors were assholes, I'm sorry, I don't know. So they're very racist, and they treated me like an animal, like a baby, and like a science experiment. And it was very dehumanizing, and I was closing in. I don't think they knew how much pain I was in and how severely unstable I was, or I just felt very unsafe. I felt abandoned. I don't think they understood any of that. They've never really experienced death either, or well, I couldn't say that, but I just don't think they understood. And so unfortunately, Jessica was isolating me a lot. No one would talk to me. God forbid someone asked me, like, are you okay? But there was a lot of anger. Her and Sora were very angry at me, and they were putting me down, judging me. When I told them that about Frankie hitting me, Jessica told me, do you want me to fuck him? And then Sora told me to get over it, and they just kept putting me down and telling me to be more positive. They just were very judgmental and critical and judgmental, and I don't think they said, "Oh, you just don't want to hear the truth, and you're not taking our advice." And I'm like, "But that's not like the appropriate advice." And when I tried to tell them that my mom told me to kill myself, Sora proceeded to look up sex videos because she's never experienced anything like that. So she was trying to ask Jessica in that moment about things like that, and they ignored me. And then Jessica decided to call her dad, which she has problems with. They left Mexico because he's an alcoholic, and she decides to call her dad and talk to her brother, which she hasn't talked. He's like, he's sitting right there, but she hasn't talked to Ramon in years, and she decides to talk to him in that moment. And then when I got mad and told them, "Hey guys, like fuck you," basically, like I just told you some really heavy shit, and you guys ignored me, and they told me that I was disrespectful and ungrateful, and then but yeah, so they isolated me a lot, and then I painted a picture with a black hole, and that black hole was supposed to represent Frankie and what he made me feel when he would rape me or beat me. And it left like this black hole in my soul. So I was like, guys, let's paint something that I could fill it up with good things, right? So all four of my friends, like, we get together and we paint stuff. Like Amanda paints her signature green donut, Sora paints peacock feathers, Michaela paints like a design, and Jessica paints like a waterfall. And the other thing she paints is fucking penises. She painted 3 of them in a bed of crystals, and I did half the painting like this orange, yellow, red, and then a purple, bluish pink, or purple, blue on the other side. It like faded to that, right? So, but the penises are painted on the right side of the painting. So I had that painting hung up the whole time I was staying with Jessica. So now that I look back, I was like, wow, I was being very much programmed. And now I realize the people I was around, like Jessica's been raped. So she was very promiscuous. And when I met her, I just got out of an abusive relationship with Jerry. And I met Frankie through Jessica, the abusive most recent ex, Frankie, that would hit me. I met Frankie through Jessica. She worked with him. And so for 4 years, she's in my ear saying, "Oh, it's so great to be sexually liberated. If your friend wants to be a slut, let them. No slut shaming. It's so liberating, sexually freeing, and like sensual, and a part of being a woman." And in my mind at that point, I was so broken and so hurt by guys that I was like, you know what? F that. Like I've always tried to commit myself to guys, and I'm just gonna do what they do. Like, so I started acting like a guy, or like a typical, I guess, what do they call them, like the fuckboys or whatever, like.
Sure. Yeah. So is that where the shame is coming from as well?
It's yeah, I'm almost done with it. It's just that, so she isolated me, was just putting in my ear about sex all the time. But now I realize she was promiscuous because she got raped. She was like a sex addict. Like she would she could not talk about it, and she had very high narcissistic traits, a little bit of a sociopath. And she just had anger and control issues. And I tried leaving her house 3 times. I tried leaving, and she wouldn't let me leave. And my friend Amanda was like, that was totally, like, she just did all that because she wanted to control you. So anyway, Jessica's putting that in my ear. One night I'm crying, and this is before I knew anything about dialectic behavioral therapy, and it teaches you about radical acceptance and that you can validate yourself. I didn't know I could validate myself. And I didn't know a healthy relationship. I didn't know boundaries, and I didn't know, like, I thought a healthy relationship was being completely intertwined or enmeshed into someone, like the Disney kind of type of love, right? But that's not real, and that's how you meet narcissists and energy vampires. When you like, things aren't supposed to go that fast. Like Frankie, it messed up my mind. He messed with my mind really bad. Like he played such mind games with me, and I was so naive and like vulnerable. And now that I have all the knowledge I do, I could see someone with MPD or even highly narcissistic traits like a mile away now. And when you get abused, I was learning, for long enough, you don't have a self, you don't know who you are, and you don't trust yourself. So when I got all the red flags, like when Jessica would say, "Do you want me to fuck Frankie?" Like I should have stopped being friends with her at that point. But I would always ignore these things because I thought putting up with abuse meant love. But now that I've come out of all of this, I understand clearly what it is. But anyway, I had sex with her brother.
So can I review a few things?
Uh-huh.
Got it. So real quick, how old are you?
I'm 27.
You're 27 now?
Okay, got it. That makes sense. So, wow. So you've been through this whole journey of people in your environment reinforcing certain beliefs that you had about yourself, and you've had all these traumatizing and hurtful experiences and social interactions that have built up to this culmination of events and feelings of, shame and depression and suicidal and all these things that you've been dealing with. Is that right so far?
Yes.
Okay. And what now you're coming a long way. You're realizing what codependency is. You're realizing some of the mistakes that you might have made in your relationship. You're starting to revisit your history. And it sounds like you're asking a question about the value of your life going forward. And there's almost a question in there that I'm hearing, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, that sounds something like, am I worth it?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And just to finish that, sorry, there's a lot of things that happen, it's not so cut and dry, but it's not until after I'm home, my friend Amanda tells me that Ramon said that I raped him, that I sexually assaulted him, when he told me to take things slow. Mm-hmm. So here I am, half the town thinks I'm a rapist.
Wow.
And it humiliated me. I was a shell of a person. And it all started with Frankie. When I pinpoint it and I look back, I was getting over Jerry and I was going back to school, and then I met Frankie and he like destroyed everything. And he was the most vampire, narcissistic, cold, robotic, scary, like I was scared of him. Like he's the kind of boyfriend that you see these crime shows that he'd kill you in the middle of the night. That's the kind of person Frankie was. Mm-hmm. And so I was humiliated. I slept for months. And Mikey basically died because of all of this.
Who died?
And I have no one
dog.
to be angry at but myself. Sorry.
Yeah, I understand. So, wow. Again, like so much has happened with you. Wow.
How old were you when you experienced your first abuse that you remember? Does this go right back into your childhood?
You know what's weird, Mercury? They say the mystic swims in the waters the psychotic drowns in. And It was weird. Like I was very spiritually open. Like I think I was protected on some levels. It's all about your awareness, because that's when people get hurt, is when you're not being aware or present. And I wanted to die so much, so badly for so long that I manifested my dog's death. And I just think when you say that, and I've been researching it, I've had trauma in the embryo. I'm being serious when I talk about that though, because you actually do. I wasn't planned, right? And I think my mom has a lot of hatred for me, or my dad or something. And so when you say that, my earliest memory is honestly like since I was born.
Wow.
A couple like key points, like at 3, at like 6 or 5, 8, 12, 14,
Okay.
so on.
All right. So you haven't been living in the real world. You've been living in a carnal
Yep.
fun. The people around us reflect to us what reality is. And you have been surrounded by either victims or victimizers from the beginning. And you have never had a clear view of what the world is. So at the moment, we're not going to worry about anyone else but you. And I just want to ask you a couple questions. Is it okay to hit people?
No.
Okay. Is it okay for someone to rape you?
No.
Okay, good. I'm glad you're aware of that now. The world you have been in is not what everyone else experiences. Well, there's going to be a large group of people who have experienced a similar world to what you're experiencing. That is not the only option. You don't need to accept any of this abuse that's been in your life up until now. And the first step is excellent, to be aware that nobody has the right to do that to you. And you have the right to find whatever safety you can in this world.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think I started worrying about myself until after Mikey died. I actually have to do what I want and care about how I feel now. And that's what eats me, is because here I am crying about Ramon and Jerry, and they can give 2 fucks about me, and I'm destroyed, disgusted, like not bathing, sleeping all day, all night, not eating too much, like, and they don't care. And that whole time I could have been enjoying the last bits of Mikey's life and making them happy for him, but yet I'm worried about assholes. And here Mikey loves me more than anything in the whole wide world, and I just neglected him. And here I am worrying about people that could care less if I was dead or not. Like, and it just, that, from my soul, like you were talking about the Akashic Records on the live stream the other night, and that's what worries me, is my soul. And therapy doesn't go too deep in this, which is ironic, because psyche comes from Latin, which comes from soul.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm worried about. I don't know. It's just so permanent, and it's written in the Akashic Records that I accidentally killed my dog, and it eats me. Like, I don't know. Like you said, I don't know if I'm worth it.
Let's put it in perspective a little bit, because those types of mistakes happen, and we have animal deaths happening all the time throughout the whole country. Dogs get hit by cars. People leave their gates open on accident next to a busy road. All sorts of people have accidentally run over an animal, somebody else's dog. And so this isn't something that, is rare. And I just think it's just to take into perspective the fact that this mistake happened, and it happens a lot. And it's not something that I feel, just from an objective point of view, not knowing you or your dog very well, it doesn't seem like something, although I can see that if I was in your shoes, I'd feel the exact same way. I'd feel horrible about it. But just if you're looking at it from the outside, I'm just telling you that I just want you to know that I don't see what happened as this horrible thing that you did. Could you have done better in that situation? Sure. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
You could have done better, but that's the case with a lot of situations. So I think putting that into perspective a little bit and realizing that you made a mistake, but it's not the end of the world, and this weight that you're putting on it about the value of your soul, I think it comes off as an overstatement and as a heavy-handed self-shaming.
Yeah.
What does that make sense? What I'm trying to say?
Oh, totally. I think I'm crying because it's, yeah, it's just hard. It's like you said, uh, accepting it is hard, and I know I could have been doing better. I got sucked into a black hole, and
Yeah, and you know what? That's okay.
yeah. Well, Mikey's dead because of it, and that's what
Yeah.
I hurt someone.
That's going to hurt for a little while, I bet. That's a tough
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Okay. And one thing about that I want to say is, and I'll step into, like, I either have a delusion of psychic phenomenon or a connection to the magical realm, or I actually do. Whichever, everyone can decide for themselves. I'm not controlling other people's perspectives. But for a moment, I'm going to step into the more magical part of myself.
Cool.
And talk about some ideas about things that, no, I do not literally know. So if we're talking about your soul, and I think actually it's the proper reaction to your life is to be worried about your soul right now. And it's centered around the dog because that's the most dramatic, painful thing for you. But I do not feel you have lost your soul. And if you had even, because first of all, I don't think anyone who understood your whole situation would actually blame you for that. You've been exposed to traumas that most people cannot understand, and you were struggling to do your best and made a fucking mistake here. But even if that hadn't been true, if your story involved that one night you broke down and in a sort of, you were going to kill yourself, and then out of just in this weird psychotic state, you actually killed your dog with a knife. That's much worse than what actually happened. And even if that was what happened, I would be continuing the same way with you.
Mm-hmm.
You have not lost your soul. That is not a point of no return at all. And it's natural for people who've experienced extreme abuse, and that when you get to the point of being so suicidal, it is natural to go to those giant questions: what's the meaning of life and what's going to happen to my soul? So I think that question is relevant for you right now, but not because you're actually in risk of losing it over the mistakes you've made so far. But that's a difficult thing to face, but I do think it's appropriate for you to face that question. And I feel like you are prepared to face that question. But up to this point, I don't see you acting, you haven't told me anything that I would label in the evil category, where you're aware it's wrong, you're doing it because it's wrong, you're doing it for the sake of harming reality. You have been coping the best you can with a very difficult life up to this point.
Thanks. It makes me cry. The validation is making me cry. Just being seen and heard, like, is something I haven't gotten from anybody ever.
And for a minute here, I think, in fact, okay, and this is just going to sound completely fucking crazy, but I'm going to go with it anyway. I think, in fact, that if anything, your dog is happy right now, and perhaps that is why that dog was in your life to begin with, and perhaps that is why that dog loved you so much, because the situation you're in is very easy for that to continue and to continue and to continue. The people around you are validating that reality and continuing to manifest it. If you were to stay in this cycle of abuse, it is very easy for 10 generations to go. You could have had kids, been in, again, attracted an abusive mate. You could have just raised children going through the same thing you went through. You could have gone on to encourage other young abused people to follow the wrong path. And you could have spread this for generations. We don't know how long it's been in your family. And if you can, in one lifetime, break that cycle, that is a monumental victory for the good. And
thank you.
You're so worried about what you lost with the dog you just lost. What about all the animals you are going to meet in the future? What about the people in the future? Or what if you have kids one day? Now is the time to fix your life so that when you have kids or have your next dog or have close friendships or encounter a young woman going through exactly what you've been through, that you're back together and ready to be the best you.
Oh, yeah.
And I could see that being something that a dog would be very happy to have its meaning of its life be, and that the legacy that it leaves is that it broke a cycle of abuse and spread that much good into the world.
Yeah.
And from what I'm picking up, you are absolutely ready to be, you're just a young broken healer. You're absolutely have everything you need coming to you to heal from this, to break this cycle of abuse. I do not see you allowing your children to be abused in the future from this point. If you take this seriously and save your soul, learn how to live properly and not extend this into the world. And in that way, you can be part of the barrier that protects the world from the evil you've grown up mixed in.
It is. It's very cyclical. It's been, what's strange, I've never wanted kids, never had the desire for kids. And, I'm not going to say, excuse me, if it's going to happen or not, but no, I've never had a desire for kids. And I'm going to share another really dark side of me, but I did end up hitting my cat a lot. But I was very asleep at that point. It was like 2011. It was when I just started to wake up. And when I say wake up, my awareness and my consciousness were growing. And the house that Jerry and I would abuse each other in is actually the house I got abused in. So I realized, looking back, being in that house was very triggering.
Right.
And it brought up a lot of dark things for me. And me and Jerry were like acting out our own childhood traumas and our parents' trauma on each other. So Jerry would beat my dog and I would beat his cat, and then we would beat on each other. And I actually have a scar on like my hip, like the side of my leg, from when he threw a piece of glass at me and it cut through my clothes and hit my hip. So I have a scar there, and it just reminds me of like, that's not love. And so there is this huge cycle, and it's funny you say that because I'm like, I've been suicidal for so long. I'm like, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? And now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, I'm here to break ancestral like trauma. Like that's probably why I'm here.
I've met people that have that same connection, and it's a really important thing, and people strongly underestimate the power of a lineage and the story that a lineage passes down. I've been sober now 8 years, and part of my history, there's plenty of shitty stuff I've done. There's plenty of things that I've done to hurt other people, all across the map. And one of the things that I learned early on was I did need to tell someone all those things that I was feeling guilty about. And so that's kind of part of what the process you're going through now is you're trying to unload the guilt in a way that you can see if you're still okay or not, and see if it's justifiable that you still exist. And I'll just tell you that there's people who have done 20 times things worse than 20 times worse than you, and there's people that have done less worse things than you. And that same goes for me, and the same goes for Mercury. And your value is not limited to the way that you acted in the past. Your value is totally up to you in this moment, in your future. But the one thing that might be helpful, because it's so easy to get stuck in, I did it, I didn't know what I was doing, and that's why I did it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that, and this is just my experience, you can take it or leave it, because what's true for you is way more important than what's true for me, because this is about you today. The problem with that is everybody's saying that. I did it, and I did it because of this, or I did it because of that. But the most liberating thing that you can do is just fucking own it. I did it, and I feel badly about it, and I made a mistake. Because then you're just letting yourself, you're truly honoring yourself in that situation. You're saying, wow, like, look at this place I was in. And I was in this place where I was hurt, and I made these mistakes, and I perpetuated the cycle, and I'm the one who's responsible for stopping that now, or for taking back my sense of personal power.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense at all, the way that I'm saying that?
No, it's a little scary and feels, I don't know.
It's totally scary. I get it. It's totally scary. I was scared shitless. And I know a lot of people who just, it's okay too if you're not ready for that stage yet. That's a higher stage of developing in this process.
I think I'm totally getting there though. Like what I was gonna say is it's scary how accurate you are. Like I feel very like the vibe is right on point.
Yeah, and I honestly I couldn't decide whether or not to say it because I don't know you well enough to challenge your narrative, right? Like I would do that for people that I really know closely. Like I would say, hey, like take a look at this piece. So I just treading carefully and trying to challenge that narrative in the most loving way possible, because I think it could be really helpful.
Thanks. And I tried to do that because they keep telling me in therapy the radical acceptance and like self-love, and yeah, and all of us agree it's very difficult because of how Mikey died, the way it happened. But when I take that bird's eye view and I see this 27-year-old female curled up in a ball, crying, dirty, alone, broken, sad, angry, resentful, and like just traumatized, I kind of feel for her. Like I'm like, you stupid bitch, but at the same time, like I'm mad at her, but I can also feel for her, but I'm still really mad at her for being so selfish. But considering what she went through, I can see how it came up to that point, but it didn't have to. I could have made so many. It was just such a small thing, and all the things are small. It makes up the big things, and
yeah,
it taught me to respect life, to appreciate life. That's really what I got from Mikey's death. Like I didn't even appreciate or respect my own life.
The fact that you're reaching out to us, shows that you have a part of you that really values yourself.
Yeah.
Just like you're saying. So there's obviously something inside of you that wants to be here, that wants to empower your life, that wants to take back a sense of choice and personal power. And so I just want to commend you for that. That's fantastic.
Wow.
And I was so touched when Mercury told me about how you wrote into the chat. And I know that in a lot of ways, you feel like we're helping you. And in other ways, the fact that you're giving us an opportunity to be of service makes our lives more meaningful.
Yeah. That's what I thought. It's sad too because I'd write it down all the time. I thought Mikey's life would be enough to motivate me out of the depression. But the whole piece I was missing, and one of the biggest pieces Mikey taught me with his death and his life is I need to love myself.
Good. That's a great lesson.
And yeah, like I'm so angry at that girl that accidentally killed him.
Well, like Mercury said, and I was thinking along the same lines, if the result of Mikey's death is you ask yourself questions about the nature of your soul and your own well-being, I think that's a sacrifice well made, as bad as that might sound, because your precious human life is not measurable in that extent. And also, I don't know exactly how it happened with Mikey, but Dogs being around water, I wouldn't necessarily think twice about it if I left a dog outside next to some water, a
Yeah.
pool or something. Like I wouldn't think. I'm not saying that I wouldn't maybe take precautions, but I'm just saying I could see how anybody, including myself, that could make that mistake. So I don't know. I mean, again, like I have no idea what the details are, but it just seems to me that you can look at this two ways. You can look at this like I did something shitty and I'm a bad person, and look at all the mistakes I've made in my past, and look at how the town's made a fool of me, and look at how ashamed I feel of myself, and what's the point of being alive. Or you can look at it the way Mercury's saying, and you can say to yourself, wow, what a wake-up call. What a painful wake-up call. And I'm hurting and I'm grieving so much. And I'm also realizing the nature of my own precious human life, and that I have something worth living for.
Whoa, that's big. I wish I could have recorded this.
It's recorded, so you can have it.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, we're recording this, and whether we decide to post it or not, Ryan can send you a copy of it, even if
it's
all yours.
I'll send you the copy so you can listen to it as many times as you want.
That's perfect. What I wanted to mention too as well is just thank you guys. I think trauma makes you very neurotic, and you get very like shallow and into your own little black hole. But it's really beautiful to me that I didn't think that me calling you would help you guys, or that I'm of any value.
You're being of service. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I love this, and in the more magical, lunatic bullshit sense, this is very powerful for me, and you're doing me a great service at the moment.
Wow, I didn't think of that.
Okay. I didn't know if I would ever, fuck it, I'm going to go into this. So, for anyone who doesn't like magical shit, this is just part of my delusion. But there's a series of fables about certain entities going into hell. The story, like my namesake, Mercury is one of them. Mercury, being the messenger of the gods, was the only god that's free to go anywhere, in and out of hell. And my mythology's a little rusty at the moment, but I think it's Persephone that he gets out of hell, and the other gods want someone out of hell. They send Mercury. Also, I don't know if you've ever read the book by Richard Matheson, What Dreams May Come.
I've seen the movie.
Okay, so
I want to read the book.
That's another example of a story that is that archetype of somebody traveling into hell to bring someone out. Or wrote the thing into the Swamp Thing storyline, which I read as a kid, where Swamp Thing has to go into hell to bring somebody out. And psychopomps. There's legends of other angelic beings, like very rare, but ones that are capable of going into hell and bringing people out. One of my spiritual callings is as a psychopomp. And I feel that my own dives into both psychosis and into suicidal depression was learning how to travel into hell and walk back out of it.
I've been saying that for years. I totally feel that.
And some people, even Dr. Strachan, sort of alluded to this. There's a spiritual idea that the kingdom of God is laid out before the eyes of men, and yet they do not see it. And that all of heaven and hell is right in front of us, and we don't. Or as Strachan said, all of heaven and hell is within us. And I think even Peterson said, like that you can create it's as good as a real hell. But what you have grown up in is like one of the upper levels of hell. You haven't grown up in the world most people have. That carnival I described, where it's all carnival mirrors that are warped and showing you as monsters. And you have been existing in a hell, not alone. Your family's in it with you. Your friends are in it with you. And you guys all think that's the real world. You're tuned into a dimension there where you are in one of the hells on earth and everyone around you thinks that's real. So the same way that in What Dreams May Come, when he goes to his wife's soul at the end, where she's in hell, and it's been a while since I've read the book or seen the movie. It's been years, but and I definitely recommend the book. If you liked the movie, Richard Matheson's a brilliant writer. The book's so much better.
Yes.
You're at that, where she's making her own house full of spiders and tormenting herself, but she thinks that's real. And then he comes down and is able to get her out of there. You have been living in a hell up to this point.
I was laughing because it's so true.
and that hell's there. It's not just you caught in it. And like Peterson says, every single time we do something right, we tip things a little to the good.
Yeah.
And getting one person out of hell is so fucking important.
Even if it's yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so.
Oh, can I say something real fast?
Sure.
Absolutely.
I just thought, sorry, it's part of like that crazy, all the hell that I went through last year. Really crazy. It's still a part of that whole story I told you. But so I get kicked out of Jessica's, and I'm going to the gas station because I just bought like alcohol and cigarettes. And I see someone around my age on the side of the street. And I'm just on my way home, and I'm like, I guess I could give that guy a ride. Stupid. I thought I was, what song I was just listening to before that is like a song about how people on the street are just like you and me, and that we're all one. So, I offered him a ride. I'm like, do you need a ride home? Or like, I can't go that far, but, I could take you near if you need a ride somewhere. And he's like, yeah, I just live a couple blocks this way. And I was like, okay, well, we'll just go that way. And he's like, yeah, I can pay you in cash, or he said he'd buy me more cigarettes or something. So he did. And I was taking him home, and I was so alone and so fucking desperate and stupid. I start telling this guy everything that happened to me. Stupidly, I didn't know about boundaries then. Also part of the reason I got fired, because I was trying to tell everybody I was being abused at work, and that was not right. But nobody was, family and friends, nobody, police, like I didn't know who to go to. But so I ended up going to high school, and his name was Jojo. And so I get kicked out after I got kicked out of Jessica's from my mom's, because we get in an argument again, and I think she's telling me to kill myself again. So I stayed with Jojo because the shelters were closed, and my sister called this. It's like, I don't want to say CYFD, but it's a emergency psychiatric unit that comes out. And they came out, but I didn't even tell them that I've been abused for years, so they just think I'm this crazy person. The abuse will do that after a while. So I stayed at that meth house with Jojo, and I didn't know that he did meth until I stayed the night and saw them doing it. But that was like a level of hell. And it was funny, when I walked in, one of the ladies there was like, welcome to hell. And I knew, and there's this guy like digging into his arm with a knife, like filleting his arm, like just taking all the flesh off of it and talking, like having a normal conversation. And it was hell, and there was a lot of guns and drugs, and I think prostitution as well. But I lost complete faith in God at that point, and myself. And there's a reason I brought that up, though, about hell. But yeah, that's just an example of it, because I really was like in hell. And something all those people had in common, they're interesting characters, but none of them had family. And that's what I realized, because I was there too, because I didn't have family. So I've been looking for my tribe for a long time, and unfortunately I've only connected with people online.
Yeah.
Either through my favorite band is Nako and Medicine for the People.
I've seen them live a few times.
Oh wow,
And
that's
Mercury
so
loves
cool.
Nako, so
Yeah.
you're in the right place. That's good
Oh.
healing music right there.
Yes, he's my favorite. I'm gonna try to
He's
see him in
fantastic.
June
Good.
in Colorado, and so
Yeah. Which is where I've seen him. I live in Colorado, so I always, when he's around, I try to see him. I've seen him 3 times, but if he comes back again, I might go see him. Is he going to Red Rocks?
yes,
Okay. Maybe I'll go.
June 16th.
Cool.
It's Morrison, Colorado, actually.
Yeah, I've been there. It's a beautiful place.
See, I think the universe has a way of connecting. Like, I think I'm becoming more in alignment with myself. It's really sad that my dog has to die, and I have to break up with my ex and all those things. But I think I'm attracting people that are more on my vibration.
The fact that you're talking to us instead of some other asshole who doesn't give a shit about you or some other person is a good sign. It means that you're starting to take some personal responsibility for what you're wanting, and you're seeing the patterns that you've been going through, and you're having a willingness to change. That's amazing. Good for you. Because one of the things I hear in your story that is glaringly obvious to me is that the trauma happens, then you feel like shit about yourself. Then because you feel like shit about yourself, you continue to perpetuate the cycle, because what is it worth anyway? Because you're no good. So you might as well just keep on the same path.
Exactly.
Or die.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So that's what I'm talking about with the personal responsibility piece. When you make the choice that your life has value, then you know that it's your responsibility to seek out those situations, environments. As a kid, you had no choice. You just were in the environment you were in. Right? So you can't go back in time and change that kid. It's okay that kid had those. It's not that kid's fault, is what I'm trying to say. But now you're this grown woman and you have this choice. What am I going to do? There's a whole world out there, and which direction am I going to walk in? North, south, east, west. You know what? Do you understand what I'm saying? There's that. You're at this pivotal point. It's just beautiful to see the changes you're making.
Wow, thank you. And I'm actually working with she's apparently really respected in the state here in New Mexico. Her name is Jill Ryan. She's a neuropsychologist.
Great.
And what's weird is I always get along with older people. Like, anyone my age besides Michaela and Amanda, like, they're on a different planet. Like, their level of awareness is way somewhere else. And they hate that kind of music that I listen to. And they hated that I didn't want to drink with them all the time. And they're just on a different wavelength. And that's really cool, because she said she doesn't see anybody, and she sees a lot in me. And my advisor at my community college has offered to pay for classes, because both Patrick and Jill, I think they see what you guys see. Like, something's happening in a good way, I think, in a big way.
Yeah. And
breakthrough.
the one thing I'll say before you come back in, Mercury, because I know you had something to say. When you make the choice to step into loving awareness and purpose for yourself, the parts of you that have been in the old cycle might have a hard time adjusting. And that you might notice that already, where there's this tendency to want to snap back to the old cycle. So just be ready for that. Be prepared for that. Be prepared to go. I don't want to say to go to battle, because I don't think that's the best word, but be prepared to be resilient and have resources so that when those old suggestions come up, I'll give you one. You should kill yourself. Your life's no good. Whatever those things are, those old inner voices or external voices. It's really important that you're equipped to deal with a response to that, because you're seeing this light inside of yourself. You're seeing this beautiful potential inside of yourself. And it's so much stronger than those voices. But those voices don't want you to think that. They don't want you to know that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my last piece on that.
Well.
Okay, and
sorry, Mercury.
you said you've attempted suicide 3 times?
About, I'd say 4.
4? Okay. And I know this, like, you may not know the answer to this, but sometimes people attempt suicide and looking back on it, they realize it was a cry for help. And sometimes later you look back and you're like, no, I was definitely trying to kill myself. It just didn't work. Were your attempts, do you think was deep down, was it a cry for help, or have you ever attempted suicide yet where you were just definitely trying to get the fuck out of here?
Definitely trying to get the fuck out of here twice.
Okay.
The other 2 times I think were more for a cry for help. The other 2 times, the first time I was most successful, I took a Costco size bottle of ibuprofen, and the doctor said if I took like the last 3 pills that I left, I would have been brain dead or dead, and they had me throw it up, and that was the closest that I got to dying. And the second time, my ex left a gun, even though he knew I was suicidal. He always left his gun, not even with the safety on. So, and I was serious in 2011, 2012.
Okay.
And it's weird. That's when I started, quote unquote, waking up, because I started learning about the Mayan calendar and like the shift of the ages. And I started getting really deep into the New Age and spiritual stuff, and kind of lost my centered and my groundedness. And now I know I've been beat up so bad by these people that I don't want to give my power away anymore. So I stand up for myself more, and I realize what's toxic now and what's not. And yeah, I've always been frustrated about money as well, and just knowing that we're going into this new age. Nobody can feel anything. It's like everyone's very distracted and no one's real. And that I think I butt heads with people. My friend Sam says, when I'm with you, my masks fall off. And I think when people are around me, you can't bullshit me. And that's why I've been like the black sheep of my family and friends, because I call the bullshit. But they'll call me crazy and chastise me for trying to. No one wants to accept the darkness, and I'm the only one doing the shadow work. And if anyone else isn't aware of their own shadow, then they project it. And I've absorbed things, and I've been very, I guess, I don't want to say awake, but I've been very on some kind of level since I was little. I've seen through beyond the veil, maybe I could say. And that might be considered crazy, but in other cultures, they say that people with like schizophrenia or mental illness have messages from the ancestors or from the other side for the rest of the community. And that's how it feels like, because I'm like, guys, we're repeating cycles, like we're abusing each other, and we're like projecting our unconscious shadow bullshit and not cleaning up our rooms, like Jordan Peterson talks about. Like, and none of them have taken psychedelics, so I've been very alone in that as well. Like, once you take psychedelics, it just changes your life. And I felt like it was one of the few times in my life I've actually experienced like a true connection with the divine. And so I've been very alone and like isolated, and like you said, I was laughing because it has been like a fun house and just like crazy world but I'm finally realizing that I'm not crazy. I've been put in a really shitty situation, and I think I'm here to wake up my family. They're all asleep, but I think my presence or my life will at least start to wake people up to what's going on. Sorry, I
Okay.
didn't mean to ramble.
No, that was all that all was helpful in understanding you. Okay, so the first thing is we've got to deal with the suicidal part of you.
Yeah.
And How close were you? When did I go live? Sunday, I think. Yeah. How close were you on Sunday night? Like, were you getting close to doing an actual attempt that night, or were you starting to plan it soon, or?
I was feeling it was a lot of ideation. Like, it was just a lot of, like, strong feelings about it. Sometimes I'll make nooses and, like, keep them aside for if I decide to. Yeah. But I haven't made a noose in a while, but it was just a very strong feeling that night, like, very overwhelming.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of suicidal time periods where I would have to allow myself to fantasize and plan it, even though I would say to myself, this is just, like, I would have to set the line that, no, I'm not going to actually plan it. But sometimes I would just sit and, like, just almost like meditate and imagine doing it and just, like, indulge the idea, like mocking. So it sounds like the tying the nooses for you is the same sort of thing where you're not actually planning to yet, but you're enjoying the faking it or building up to it. So you've made real attempts before, and you're going to have to just make a decision as to whether or not suicide is an option or not. And you're going to have good enough reasons that from this point forward, it's not an option if that's what you want to choose.
Yeah.
So are you serious about the state of your soul?
Yes.
Okay. And you seem to have some sense of purpose somewhere in you.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know exactly what happens in the afterlife, but I have strong intuition that suicide is not a good idea.
Yeah.
In the longer term, whether it's you've got to relive the same experience or whether you've got to spend some time in a hell separate from the one you've been living in so far. And for me, I just had, and it came down to two things with me that I decided on. First was that it would be far too hurtful to my family if I were to kill myself. But the other was that I accepted the metaphysical consequences of suicide as well. And I decided that no matter how shitty life was, no matter what, I wasn't going to kill myself.
Yeah.
Do you want a decision?
I apologize for interrupting. I think I've decided as well a while ago. I mean, it gets so strong sometimes I question it. But if I were to have, like, a solid foundation or something to hold on, or how do I say, like, just a really strong reason not to, it would just be not to bring any more pain, because Nako Bear does have a song about, like, how he's like, that darkness will always be a part of me, but I'm learning to balance it with my light. So if I kill myself, I'm only bringing more pain to the world. So I figure the rest of my life has to be dedicated. I owe it to Mikey, because, I was meditating on that as well, because all I kept hearing in my mind is, kill yourself, you killed your dog. Like, you don't love your dog, you killed your dog, like, just kill you. Like, I just kept hearing those things. I was like, I really got to turn this around, because this really is going to make me kill myself. And I felt so bad about killing, Mikey's accident. And
I like how you reworded that a little bit, because I think that that's a better way of saying it.
Totally. Yeah. My therapist,
if you had actually killed Mikey, then I would say go ahead and say that. But it's not obvious to me that that's what happened. So I appreciate that you're being more realistic about the situation.
Thanks. I'm actually, that dialectic behavioral therapy really helped me. And it's ironic, because, I told my sister Frankie was hitting me, and then she started hitting me. But in the car, like, she pulled over and started punching me in the head, and, like, but she sped home and connected me with Jill Ryan, the neuropsychologist. And
yes.
Now, and I have DBT now, which is the dialectic behavioral therapy, and it's helped so much. So she's telling me to reframe things, because we have myths, and then, like, I didn't know that emotions weren't facts. I thought like the way you feel were facts.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big realization.
Mhm. And then identifying, like when I got told that I was depressed in middle school, I identified with it. So it's
Right.
like a huge story I've been telling myself for a
Give
very
them the
long
name
time.
and they'll play the game. That's what Dr.
Mhm.
Stockman always tells me. Yeah,
Yeah,
be very,
exactly.
very, very careful about the stories you tell yourself. Actually,
Mhm.
somebody wrote in the chat yesterday when Dr. Strachan was on, they said, how about dealing with long-term depression? And I actually asked him, like, what's your answer to that question? And he said, the biggest thing with long-term depression, the worst thing about long-term depression that people do to themselves is the stories that they're telling themselves. That's the worst part.
Mhm. I
And
actually ended up listening to that video you guys did.
that's
Both of them.
great. That's great. Yeah. So be very careful. I'll tell you, I've identified the part of me that's depressed, the black hole. We talked about that as you watch those videos. Now, the black hole tells a story. The story for me, and not all depressions have stories, but a lot of them do. My depressions tend to have stories. And the
Mhm.
story for me is you're a piece of shit, you're unworthy, this is stupid, that's stupid, everything is dumb. Like there's no value, and the more specific it can get about things that I've screwed up or people I've hurt or areas where I'm going wrong or areas where I'm inadequate, then the more ammunition it has. It will take anything it can use. Anything. It doesn't matter if it's logical or not. If it can
It
use
like feeds on it.
it feeds on it. Exactly. So one of the best things that we can do as pilgrims on this path of facing depression is to stop the stories in their tracks. And really what Mercury teaches on this channel, or he shares rather, is really beautiful. He always has a response for what it's saying. He never lets a voice speak in those negative states without responding. That's
Aww.
so powerful. I mean, he's been
Mhm.
practicing that for years. So his commitment to living a good life, to choosing that God is good, that life is good, is just amazing. I mean, look at this guy. He's been for years doing that. And now he has a family and kids. And every time I call Mercury, guess what? He's there for me. Never once
Aww.
has he dropped the ball. Now, that's not to say that he might not be busy sometimes and we have to catch up later, but he's never said, I'm sorry, I'm a piece of shit today. I can't talk to you. He's never
Mhm.
done that. So he's clearly made that progress. So if he can do it, then you can do it too, because he was in dire straits.
Mhm. Totally. I do feel like I am at that point where I can see my value, because my friend Kayla tells me that. Obviously you're still here because you feel like you have some value, and I do. And I guess like you're asking me what my black hole is. It's hard to identify, really. I just think my dad leaving at such a young age, like right when I was born, basically, maybe affected me more than I realized. Or like obviously it's from abuse too, because it came from my grandma. She was very
Right.
abusive. My mom. I was bullied at school.
Right.
So continued repetitive
But just remember
abuse.
this. It doesn't matter as much all the reasons why. What really matters is what it does. And what it does is tear you down. That's the actions, right? You can spend your whole life in therapy, and that's fine, figuring out why. That's a good thing to explore. But as far as the utility of moving forward, I mean, you could ask all the questions. A lot of it could be about trauma. Some of it could be you came into the world with it. Some of it could be, we talked about lineage passed down from that. Some of it could be all these different traumatic experiences passed together. All that's the past, though. All you could what can you do now other than move into the best, brightest future possible and into healing?
Right. And
Now,
I
I'm
know.
not saying that there's no value in doing the story, because there's certainly in certain therapeutic contexts, there's therapies where you do have to go back into the stories to heal.
Mhm.
But there's also a downside to focusing too much on the story, because you continue to tell yourself the story over and over again, like you talked about already. And then all of a sudden you're limiting your reality to that story.
I have an idea about that.
Great.
So, first of all, everything that I'm going to say about the metaphysical or the magical does not in any way negate the psychological perspective. Okay? So,
Sure.
With myself, I work with both perspectives. So I think it's great that you're getting like proper psychological help. Stick with that. That's going to be a part of the process. But if you want, I can, and I don't think I've done this much, if at all yet, on the channel. I can step aside from the psychological, because we know you're expanding that, and I can talk to you just as a magician for a minute.
Cool. That's more my jam. I love psychology. I love mythology. I love all philosophy and stuff, but I love mystical stuff the most. So take it away, please.
Because this entire conversation, and like I was saying, I was excited to talk to you, like really thanking you, because this has just made my wings unfold. Just the sense of magic flowing into me, this entire conversation has been strong.
Guys, there's a huge, gigantic rainbow right now. It's beautiful.
Wow, that's amazing.
So I feel it was meant that I went online and titled it just right to meet you that night, and this is a chance for me to work a little bit of magic here.
Sorry, this is like a huge ass rainbow, right? It's so beautiful. Okay, go on. Magical, yes?
Okay. So you know the power of stories, right? And you've been repeating the story that is focused in on the real world level of things here. But if we have the metaphysical layer to apply, and this is where, like Jonathan Pajot talks about how much the myth is real in a different way. We can start examining your life from a different perspective. So rather than talking about the actual specifics of your real world life that other people saw, the reality is that magically you have been inhabiting a layer of hell here on Earth, right? And like Peterson says, the way to plan shit out is know where you are, know where you want to go, and then set the angle. So we're going to tell a different story now, where here in these end times, because you seem to have an idea that we are at the end of the world, here at these end times, people are coming in to do very important things. And a beautiful soul offered to come in, tuned into a certain layer of hell, to break the cycle and get out of it so as to create the path for others to follow. As we're moving through here, every little bit that tips towards the good is helping the whole world. Every little bit tipping towards the bad is hurting it. And we can look at it like you offered to come in, jump into the bad, and by moving, transmute some of that energy to make the world a lighter place. Now, it seems to me, and I've been practicing ritually for years, to be a psychopomp and to have the universe send me the souls that need to come out of hell. I've been communicating and asking spiritual guides to be doing the work for me, like setting this up. And so I feel like, Mikey, you were like at the end of What Dreams May Come. You're living in hell, unaware of it, believing it's the real world. And Mike volunteered to go into hell to get to you.
I feel like crying.
And Mikey didn't make it back. He died going into hell to get you, but he got me to you. So he didn't make it.
Really powerful.
But it's because of him that you are now in contact with a lunatic magician, psychopomp.
Yeah, my Mikey baby. He's my angel.
Yes, and we can honor him by getting you the fuck out of where you are and moving to a layer of heaven here on Earth.
There's a beautiful rainbow,
Okay. And I know you want to bring everyone around with you, but that's not how the story goes right now.
Right.
This is where the magician is in hell, saying to the girl, I can get you out, but I can't bring everyone out at once.
Yeah.
We can sneak people out one at a time. We're going to have to focus on getting you and you alone out. And then who knows? Because I never thought I was going to be doing any of this. I just thought I had to get out of hell myself when I was there.
Yeah.
And the same way that you said me being online, talking about what I'd been through and being someone better is drawing you out. Let's focus on you now, and who knows what the fuck you'll be doing when you're 40. Okay?
Yeah.
Don't worry about how we're going to save anyone else now. We have to get you out and get you well, and then you will be ready to help all kinds of people.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a really important point that I was going to shed some light on as well, is that be very wary of trying to save your family before you've saved yourself.
Right.
And
Because your
I've been doing
family
that
is
for
part of the
2
problem.
decades.
Your
I've been
family is going to
trying to do
continue
that.
to perpetuate the trauma cycle, and you're going to continue to get triggered by the states of socialization that you're in with them. So very good warning there from Mercury.
And like Peterson says, as soon as you start cleaning up your room, especially in a dysfunctional house, everyone is like, what the fuck do you think you're doing?
Yeah, they hate it.
Than us. You're a piece of shit.
Exactly.
Leave it the way it was.
Yeah.
We're not bringing anyone else out, but if you commit to this, I guarantee we can get you out.
Wow.
There's no doubt.
Wow, that's beautiful.
I was just gonna say, I think my therapist would agree, or like the people that the small little tribe, like you guys, I'd consider Nako and the medicine people, Beyond the Veil on YouTube. There's a lot of people on YouTube. That's my tribe, and my neurologist and my therapist and my advisor at the college. I think they see what you guys see, and yeah, I'm getting out of hell finally. It's been so dark for so long, like 2 decades of a dark night of the soul, I'd say. Barely am I starting to finally get out of hell.
Hi folks, thank you for tuning in to this video with Sorting Myself Out. Hit that notification bell and that subscribe button so you don't miss anything going forward. If you'd like to be an audience guest and you have some stuff that you're working on that you could use some feedback on, or you just want to share, email sortingmyselfout0@gmail.com. Thank you.